Hello all, welcome to part 25 of the Wireless LAN Security Mega Primer. So I've called this edition Mood Swings of a Wandering Wi-Fi Client, and you'll know just in a couple of minutes why I called it so. So we all have seen in previous videos that when we looked at hotspot and honeypot based attacks, the client basically had some sort of an open authentication as well as no encryption based SSID stored in its profile, which we exploited. However, a client could have multiple such profiles. They could be open, web, WPA, WPA2, personal, as well as enterprise. And this is where the question arises that how do we go ahead and attack all of these clients? And is it even possible to attack all of these different SSID profiles? Now, there are a bunch of tools out there, but unfortunately, none of them seem to work. So, we'll crack this from basic principles, right? So, here is the question, how do we begin? Now, what we will do is first we will figure out what are the different SSIDs the client is actually probe requesting for, right? And from there on, we will go ahead and create four different access points with open web, WPA personal, and WPA2 personal for that same SSID and see which one the client connects to for that specific profile, right? We leave out WPA, WPA2 enterprise for the time being. I'll come back to it later. So let the games begin. Okay. So hopefully I should have my trusted card. Yes. So let me first create a monitor mode interface. This is taking longer than usual, but we have it. And now let's use AeroDump to find the client. So I'm very sure we would find multiple SSIDs in clients, but what I'm interested in is always my little trusty phone. Okay, so here it appears, and let's see what all it's searching for. Actually cycling through all channels, and hence it takes a little bit of time to figure out if it is actually searching for any other network or not. Right, one of the things which we could do, if you notice this is quite bright for you actually. So one of the things is to probably station ourselves on just one channel, because the client typically would cycle around various channels and send these probe requests, right? So let's just use one channel and wait for our client to probably come around there, right? And but also like some interesting SSIDs out there. Probably connect an access point also. Just add a little bit of more traffic here. Right, so this is slowly picking up a little bit of stuff, and now seem to be connected to one of the access points, which is D-Link, right? but we typically want a client which is actually roaming. So let's now disconnect the access point. D-Link was the access point which we were kind of using, which is the kind of honeypot access point which is there, right? So now if you notice, the client will be disconnected very soon and it is probing for D-Link once again. This was the access point we had used in the previous demo. If you notice, D-Link is practically down right now, though arrow dump takes a little bit of time to actually show that, right? So there could be multiple such profiles. Now the point is, we do not know what profile is D-Link or Wireless Lab. So what do we really do, right? We know the client is actively probing and could actively search for both of these. So let's go ahead, restart this capture. We also seem to have captured a little WPA handshake. And let's start monitoring on this channel, right? Now here is the question. We know that D-Link is also stored in the client's profile currently because we connected to D-Link. So how do we create different access points with different configurations? Now, as you know, there is only one monitor mode interface, Mon0. But here is the interesting thing. Some of you may already know, you could create multiple monitoring mode interfaces on the same physical interface. So we could just hit start WLAN 0 and this creates Mon1. I could hit this again to create Mon2, hit it again to create Mon3, and hit it one more time to create Mon4. Right? So now when we look at it, we have 5 monitor mode interfaces. One is where all the sniffing and everything is currently happening, right? And D-Link was a profile it has connected to previously, which means it's stored. Now the interesting thing about couple of clients which I can kind of tell you is that they sometimes do not broadcast many of the SSID in their profile. So one of the interesting things I'm noticing with the iPhone is that it is going ahead and searching for Wireless Lab, right? But it's not actively searching for D-Link, but as soon as D-Link appears, it will try to connect to it. Anyway, coming back, once we know there is one such SSID, here is what we'll do. We'll use Airbase NG and create different access points. So the eSSID will always remain D-Link. What we will need to change is the MAC address, which is the BSSID of the access point. So let's call it AA, right? And this would of course have no encryption. So we'll create 4 of them: Open, WEP, WPA PSK, and WPA2 PSK. Okay. So everything has to actually run on the same channel because we actually have one physical card. So the card can only be on one channel. If you put multiple channels, it will start multiplexing and that will not be good, I can tell you. So there's no problem at all. We can keep everything on one channel, right? Which is channel 1 in this case. And then let's give it Mon1 for the first access point. Awesome. So now if we kind of go back here, we are seeing that there is Mon1 with all AAs as MAC address with name D-Link, right? Note this is not showing D-Link, but if you take up a Windows laptop, it would typically end up showing it. Anyway, so now we open another tab, and this time we will go ahead and create a web encrypted access point with the same name. The client is currently down, the client is not up. So we're just creating all of this in the background. it doesn't really matter. I mean, you could be creating and you will notice, well, even before you may reach WPA2, the client may already have connected to one of them. Channel is 1. We want to set the web flag. And quickly check if there is anything else which needs to be set here. Well, I guess nothing else. And this is going to use mon2, right? Just check if there was any other option. Oh, oops, the MAC address will need to be changed here as well. Let's use BBs for this. Right? Probably want to use blah blah blah. Okay, no problem. Let's kind of go back here, and you would notice that now an access point with name D-Link and web has been created. Now let's create an access point using WPA PSK with, of course, the same ESS ID. D-Link, this time you have mon 3, I guess. Last one was mon 2. Yeah. And once again, we need to give a new MAC address. And now let's actually go ahead. Setting the web encryption flag is kind of helpful because typically this means there is encryption in the beacon frames. Now we'll actually use the -z option, and because we are using PSK currently, WPA PSK, let's just set it to TKIP. Right? Looks good. Okay. Oops, I think I gave the wrong option. It's -a for the MAC address. Right, awesome. Now let's kind of go back here and you should see 3 access points. Perfect. Right, if you see in between we had 1 because of the kind of typo which we had, but that went off. So we could just quickly restart this to ensure there is less clutter around, right? Okay, so we have web and we have PSK. I don't know why it's still listing the old one, but no issues. It seems to be listing open web and WPA, right? Last one is Vivek, which we don't really care about. Now let's open up another tab. Use a new MAC address, ESS ID remains the same, channel remains the same. This is going to be the mon3 interface. Anything else? I have a very bad memory for options. And now we'll actually end up using the -Z for WPA2. And this time let's give it a CCNP. Seems to be looking okay. We have 0, 1, 2, 3. I think this should be 4. Right, and now we are back here and now we have 4 access points, right? AA is the open one, BB is basically the web one, CC is the WPA PSK, and DD is the WPA2 PSK, right? Awesome. Now let's do the following. Let's also open up Wireshark. Before we do that, let's take the client's MAC address who we are trying to probe right now. I guess it seems to have disappeared, but we can still get it. Here is the client MAC address. This is the MAC address of my iPhone, right? The reason is you will notice something very interesting. Okay, let's open up Wireshark. We could continue to sniff on mon0. There's no problem with that at all because that's what we've created for all the sniffing. Now what we are interested in is wlan.addr equals then the client's MAC address, right? Apply the expression, restart the sniffing. This way, now we can monitor what the client is doing on channel 1. The reason is any interaction the client is going to have with all of these honeypot access points which we just created here is going to be only on channel 1, right? There's one in which there is channel 1 missing. The third one, TKIP. I guess I forgot to give the channel here. Yes. No problem, right? And now one of the additional things which we will do is also store this somewhere, saying honeypot. Okay. But the games begin. Now all the access points are on the same channel. We have open web WPA PSK WPA2 PSK, right? See all those beautiful beacon frames out there, and let the games begin. So I have just started my client, right? And what you would notice is that it is sending probe requests for which probe responses are also being sent, right? And it is now going to try and connect to one of them. Hopefully I'm not dropping too many packets. And interestingly, the probe request and probe response sequence are kind of going by. And let's see what we have here right now. So interestingly, we have managed to capture a WPA handshake, even though like always Wireshark, oops, did I stop the sniffing? Wireshark has been kind of a disappointment. Okay, let's actually restart this thing. Right, let's restart this whole thing here. Let's go back to Wireshark. Let's restart the capture. Okay, looks good now. Let's start the client once again. Client is sending out probe requests and probe responses. And let's actually have a look here. And if you notice, now it's probing for D-Link as well, because now over the air it is able to see D-Link. And interestingly, based on what kind of client you may have, it would take a little bit of time for it to kind of go ahead with it. Now the funny thing is that this could even be something which can be easily abused anywhere, right? Let's kind of go back here. Fortunately or unfortunately, okay, we are able to see a lot of interesting things happening here. Okay, perfect. I don't know how, if you notice, this is a bit unstable because for whatever reason, it's not capturing all packets, but I think our job is kind of done. What you will notice is that the client just completed a WPA handshake, right? And if we go here to each of these little tabs here, you will find that the client ended up connecting to this access point having WPA 1 TKIP as the configuration. And we will notice something very interesting which you will interpret shortly. If you notice, basically the exchange has happened for the first packet, second packet, and then there is a deauthentication sent from the client to the access point. This is very funny, right? So the first packet in WPA, if you remember the whole four-way handshake and exchange, is sent by the access point to the client, right? And the access point sends the authenticator nonce in it. Well, this is exactly what Airbase NG is doing. The client responds back with, of course, its own supplicant nonce along with the MIC over the frame body. Now, what happens is, basically after this, the AP has also gone ahead and sent a packet to the client, which unfortunately we are not able to see here, but it does not really know the key, and hence either it is not sending or it probably sent something which didn't work, and the client automatically sent a deauth. But here is something very interesting. We were able to catch the handshake, or let's see, probably it's part of the handshake. Let's launch Wireshark. And I guess the name we had given to this packet capture was honeypot. Looks like there are two of them. It should be the second one. And what we can do is quickly just look for the ePOL frames. Some here. Let's just go to the end here, clear the expression. This way we can see a little bit more in case this has captured something. Okay, right? So this was able to capture two packets. Now here's the funny thing, if you kind of remember and go back to our slides, we had said that packet 1 and packet 2 are sufficient to crack WPA, PSK, right? Why? Because the AP nonce, the client nonce, the MIC, client MAC address, AP MAC address, all are available. So we could do the brute force dictionary attack. So now the funny thing is, if we just come back here to this terminal, honeypot2.cap actually contains a handshake. And we could actually launch an attack using Aircrack NG against this handshake packet, even though it only contains the first two packets. Note, this is something very important and interesting. So it says it was able to find one handshake here for CCCC, right? So let's take network 4. And of course, currently the passphrase is not in the dictionary. Let's look at the dictionary. And which would actually mean that, well, you may fail, right? But if the passphrase is in the dictionary, you may be able to crack this as well. So we will go ahead and look at that later about how we can probably crack this in a reverse way and everything. But coming back to our slides once again, where we are just dealing with honeypots in general, in conclusion, yes, it is possible to have the client associate with you, but after that you may be failing to establish a real encrypted connection to be able to send and receive data from the client. The reason being, you do not have the key. The same applies to WEP, WPA as well as WPA2 PSK, right? So association will happen. Why? Because first there is authentication, probe request, probe response. Then there is the authentication phase, which is typically open. And even if it was shared key with WEP, we know it can easily be broken. Then basically we have the association phase. Post association, data transfer happens directly in the case of WEP. In the case of WPA, WPA2 PSK, the PTK is derived using the PMK. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, packet 3 is the way the client knows that the access point actually has the right key, as the right WPA, WPA2 PSK passphrase. And we fail at that point. So in the next video, we will take up all these 4 circumstances and do demonstrations where just with a client, we are able to crack all of this. Now for WEP, we already know Hirte attack, CFrag, you have the Cafe Latte attack, of course. In the case of WPA, WPA2, PSK, well, I mean, you know, our success probability is just as much as for the dictionary attack, which we talked about previously. But we will do all of these demos. So once again, in summary, you could create multiple access points which would be open, web protected, WPA protected, and WPA2 protected, right? If you notice, the client also tried to connect to this as well. So interestingly, with all of this, you could very easily go ahead and try and break the encryption in many cases. So that's all for this video. Please let me know if you have any questions regarding this. And like always, please leave your comments behind. If you have any questions, might be a good idea to leave in the comments. We have an extremely helpful community here who's doing a lot of stuff. And I think either even before I can get to your question, someone else may end up answering it. So post it here as well. It's very important. And that's it. Look forward to meeting you guys in the next video. Oh, by the way, I have also some good news before I kind of cut this video. I will be speaking at Black Hat USA this year, as well as at BrewCon. In Black Hat USA, I'm conducting a workshop 2.5 hours. In BrewCon, I'm conducting a 2-day training. So if any of you guys are around or plan to be there, either Black Hat, DEF CON or BrewCon later, definitely drop me a note. Nothing would make me happier but to meet one of you in person, right? That's all. Bye-bye. Enjoy.